Zarar was a young boy of gentle nature, soft-spoken, and impossibly innocent. In the entire village, people often said Zarar's heart is cleaner than the river after rain. But the one person who never saw Zarar's goodness was his own father, Nadim. A man with a temper hotter than fire, ruled his house like a dictator. His words were final, his anger unpredictable, and his ego massive. He believed discipline meant fear, and respect meant silence. Zarar grew up learning that at home, love didn't bloom, orders did. His mother had died long ago, leaving him alone with a father whose heart was made of stone. Zarar tried hard to understand him, tried harder to earn his approval, but nothing was ever enough. The family owned a large piece of land at the edge of the village, fertile soil that had fed generations. It was not just property, it was pride, heritage, survival, and identity. Every family in the village knew, land is life, and Zarar, ever since he turned 16, spent his days working tirelessly on it, watering the crops, cleaning the trenches, repairing the fences, sowing seeds with hands cracked from sun and labor. But Nadim never appreciated him. "You work slow," he yelled. "You're useless. You could never handle responsibility." Each sentence was a cut, but Zarar endured. He believed if he remained patient, one day his father would see his sincerity. But fate had other plans. One blazing afternoon, the heat heavy enough to melt shadows, Zarar accidentally broke a small portion of the irrigation pipe while pulling weeds. It was a minor crack easily fixable, but Nadim saw it and that was enough. His face turned red with fury. "You good-for-nothing boy. You'll destroy everything I've built." "Baba, it was a mistake. I'll fix it." "No," Nadim roared, throwing the tools aside. "I'm done with you." Done. Zarar stood frozen. His father's words struck harder than any slap. "You can't even handle this land. You'll never be capable. Never." Zarar swallowed tightly. "Baba, I always try." But the fire was already burning in Nadim's chest. "You want this land? You never?" With shaking hands, Nadim pulled papers from his pocket, land documents Zarar had never known existed. "I went to the lawyer today. I removed your name from the inheritance list. You have no share in this land anymore." Zarar felt the world tilt under his feet. "Baba, my name? You removed my name? And more than that, get out." Nadim kicked dirt toward him. "Get out of my land, my house, my life." The villagers nearby gasped. Never had anyone seen such cruelty. Zarar stepped back, trembling. "Baba, where will I go? That's not my problem anymore." Nadim spat. "Leave now." And so Zarar, innocent, hardworking, heartbroken, walked away, with nothing but the clothes on his back and the ache of betrayal tearing through his chest. As night fell, Zarar wandered the empty roads, tears drying into dust on his face. His feet blistered, his throat parched, his soul crushed. He had never imagined that the man he loved, despite everything, would destroy him in a single moment. He kept hearing Nadim's words echo like poison. "You have nothing. You are nothing." But something inside Zarar shifted that night. A part of him broke, yes, but another part woke up. A small flame, faint, but burning, whispered, "If he thinks I have nothing, one day, I will have everything." He didn't know how, he didn't know when, but Zarar made a silent promise to the stars above. "I will return stronger, and he will remember this day forever." The village forgot Zarar faster than he expected. For years he had imagined that his absence would echo in the streets, that whispers would rise whenever someone passed the boundary road where his father had driven him away. But the world rarely mourns the quiet, the small, or the powerless. Life moved on. Crops sprouted, harvests came and went, and the dust settled where his footsteps had vanished. But the silence that had followed that day planted something in him, something sharp, something cold. He had left as an empty-handed boy, but he returned as a young man shaped by hunger, injuries, betrayal, and the memory of being thrown out of his own land like a stranger. For years he had worked at distant farms. He had learned the value of strength, not the kind used to hurt others, but the kind needed to survive harsh winters, cruel foremen, and days without food. His hands hardened, his back strengthened, and his eyes learned to read men's hearts with the precision of a hunter. Most importantly, he saved every coin he earned by the time he was 19. Zarar was unrecognizable, not just to the world, but to himself. He returned quietly, walking the dusty path toward the village he once called home. The air smelled the same of wet soil, smoke, and cattle butts. Everything else felt changed. Or maybe he was the one who had changed. He paused at the hill, overlooking the land that had once been his inheritance. Fields of wheat swayed under the morning sun. The mud-walled house still stood, though the paint had peeled, and the wooden door hung slightly crooked. But the hardest thing to look at was the lone figure working in the field. His father, the same rigid posture, the same slow, labored movements of a man who believed the world owed him obedience. But something was different. His father moved with a limp now, and he paused often, holding his side as though something inside him caused constant pain. Zarar watched him for a long time, an ocean of emotions churning within. He didn't feel joy, nor pity, only a familiar reminder of the boy who had once begged for approval, for understanding, for a place in his own home. And then he saw someone else walk into the field. A woman in her thin, tired-looking, with a scarf loosely tied over her hair. She carried a jug of water and placed it beside the old man. She said something, the father shook his head sharply, and she lowered her gaze. Stepping back, Zarar's jaw tightened. That must be his cousin's widow, the woman his father had brought to the house after her husband died. The village called it charity. Zarar knew better. His father valued control more than compassion. As Zarar watched, more memories flooded him. His mother's silent tears, his father's raised voice, the day he was dragged off the land with nothing but the clothes he wore, the promise he had made to himself. One day, I will take back everything that was stolen from me. He walked down the hill, step by step, until his shadow stretched onto the path leading to the field. He stood there, letting the wind blow dust around his feet as he waited. It didn't take long for someone to notice him. The widow glanced his way, her eyes widening. Recognition flickered across her face, much older, much dimmer, but unmistakable. She dropped the jug, water splashing across the dry soil, and whispered. The father looked up. For a moment Zarar saw confusion on the man's face, then disbelief, then something sharp and unpleasant, a mixture of fear and old pride. The old man breathed. He took a step forward, leaning heavily on his stick. You have the nerve to return. Zarar's face remained calm, unreadable, disciplined by years of hardship. I came for what belongs to me. His father's nostrils flared. What belongs to you? You left. You threw me out. You deserved it. You never listened. You never understood. Their words collided in the open space, slashing through years of unspoken resentment. The widow stood trembling behind them. The old man glared at Zarar with the stubborn fire of a man who believed the world revolved around his authority. This land, he said, tapping his stick angrily on the ground, belongs to me, and I decide who is worthy of it. Zarar stepped forward, eyes narrowing. And you decided your own son wasn't? Silence settled like dust after a storm. The old man tried to hide a moment of weakness as he pressed a hand to his side, grimacing. Zarar noticed. The pain in that gesture was familiar, not physical pain, but a wound of pride. Look at you, his father spat. You come here with your shoulders broadened, your hands hardened, thinking you're a man, but you're still that same disobedient boy who ran from responsibility. I was thrown out, Zarar corrected quietly. Not because I failed, because you did. The man's grip tightened around his stick. For the first time, Zarar saw fear shine in the old man's eyes. It wasn't fear of violence, it was fear of loss. Fear of losing control, fear of losing the land. But Zarar had no intention of fighting, not like that. Revenge wasn't always taken by fists. Sometimes it was taken by knowledge, strategy, and timing. I didn't come to argue, Zarar said at last. I came to claim my right, and I refuse, the father barked. Zarar reached into his satchel and pulled out a folded paper. Legal documents he had been preparing for 2 years. I spoke with lawyers, with the land registry officers, with the elders of this village who still remember the agreement given to my mother before she died. His father froze. He had not expected this. This land is half mine by law, Zarar continued, and now, I have proof. I am giving you a chance to solve this peacefully. The old man laughed, a bitter, broken sound. You think the village will stand with you? You think anyone respects you after you ran away? Zarar didn't respond. He didn't need to, because right at that moment, someone else approached the field, a neighbor, walking slowly, watching them with curiosity. Then another, and another. Word spread quickly in small villages. People began gathering along the path, whispering as Zarar, he's back. Looks stronger than his father now. He has papers, legal papers. Rumors poured like water into the crowd. Zarar didn't turn to them. He kept his eyes on his father. This doesn't have to become a fight, he said softly, sincerely. You can acknowledge my right, and I'll help you. You're getting older. You can't handle this land alone. But pride is the cruelest enemy of peace. Get out, the old man hissed. Zarar's jaw tightened. This is your last chance. The father raised his stick as if to strike, but his knees buckled. The widow gasped and grabbed his arm as he staggered. Zarar instinctively stepped forward to help, but the old man slapped his hand away. I don't need you, he whispered through clenched teeth. I never did. The crowd murmured in discomfort. Zarar stepped back. He looked at the field, at the broken fence, at the weak crops. He looked at the tired widow who lived under the same roof as the angry old man. He looked at the land he once loved, a land now suffering under the weight of pride and loneliness. And then he made a decision that would begin his true revenge. Not through violence, not through shouting, but through a plan that would strike the para, plan that would make his father watch everything he controlled. Slowly slipped from his fingers. Zarar turned away without another word, and the crowd parted as he walked through them. People stared, some in awe, some in fear, some in silent respect. His revenge had begun, not with fire, not with blood, but with power. A quiet storm gathering behind his calm eyes, and soon, the entire village would feel its wind. The sun was tilting west when Zarar reached the old banyan tree by the river. The wind brushed across the water, carrying memories of his childhood, memories he no longer allowed himself to feel. He sat on a rock, opened the leather pouch he carried, and unfolded the legal documents again. They were clean, precise, undeniable. Half the land belongs to him. not by mercy, not by favor, by law. He had spent years understanding the systems his father had always abused. Men like his father ruled villages through fear, not through justice. They shouted louder than others, so everyone else stayed quiet. But Zarar had changed. He had learned how power truly worked. He watched as the river flowed, steady and patient, carving its path through stone without force, only persistence. That is how I will break him, he thought, not with fists. With inevitability. The next morning, Zarar walked to the village market. Men sat on charpoys drinking tea, talking about the same old things: crops, marriages, debts, weather. But the moment they saw Zarar, conversations paused. Eyes followed him, some curious, some cautious, some guilty. He was no longer the thin boy they remembered. His shoulders had broadened, and he walked with a quiet confidence that made older men shift in their seats. Zarar didn't confront anyone. He didn't need to. He greeted each person calmly, respectfully. He bought tea, paid fair prices, asked about their families. His behavior confused them. After all, they expected anger. They expected him to return with fire in his blood. Instead, he returned with discipline. By midday, the whispers had doubled. He's educated in the law now. He has documents. He's not the same boy. He speaks like someone who knows his rights. Fear grew not of violence, but of change. Because men like Zarar's father depended on silence to rule, and silence was breaking. That evening, Zarar visited the panchayat, a council of elders. 5 old men sat in the courtyard, their faces lined with time and habit. They greeted him cautiously. Zarar, the head elder, said, "We heard you have returned." "I have," Zarar replied, "and I came for justice, not conflict." The elders exchanged glances. He placed the legal documents on the table. They read quietly. The air thickened. "Your father never mentioned this," one elder said. "He buried everything that threatened his control." Zarar replied softly. Another elder cleared his throat. "You understand, he is a proud man." "I understand," Zarar said, "that pride does not erase truth." The elders studied him for a long moment. "You aren't asking us to remove him from his land?" the head elder asked. "No," Zarar said. "I'm asking you to acknowledge what is already mine." "And if he refuses?" another elder asked. Zarar, single quotes, eyes cooled. "Then the law will speak." The elders stiffened. Threatening the panchayat was dangerous, but Zarar wasn't threatening. He was stating fact. One elder leaned back. "You have changed," he murmured. "Yes," Zarar replied, "and I will not be silent again." They nodded slowly. Something shifted in that moment, respect perhaps, or resignation. The head elder finally folded the papers. "We will call your father for a hearing in 2 days. It wasn't a victory, not yet. But the board was set, and his father would have to stand before the entire village. That night, Zarar returned to the edge of the land. His land end watched from a distance. The widow was spreading fodder for the animals. She moved slowly, fearfully, avoiding his father's eyes. The old man sat on the charpoy clutching his stick, his jaw clenched tightly. He already knew. Someone must have told him. Zarar stayed in the shadows until he heard the old man shout, "Let him come. Let him take one step into this house and see what happens." The widow flinched and lowered her head. Zarar's chest tightened, not with pity, but with anger. He still rules through fear. The old man's voice shook with rage. "He thinks he can return after all these years and take what I built, what I protected. I fed him, I raised him, and now he wants to steal from me." The widow's voice came out small, trembling. "He is your son." That was the wrong thing to say. The old man thrashed his stick against the ground. "He is nothing, nothing." Zarar felt something inside him shift. A line, a boundary. He turned away before the fury inside him consumed him. Revenge was not done in anger. It was done in clarity, and clarity said his father must fall slowly, publicly, until he understood the weight of every cruelty he had ever thrown at others. The next morning, as Zarar walked near the boundary fence, a soft voice called out, "Zarar." He turned. It was the widow, standing nervously with a basket in her hands. Her eyes held fear but also relief. "I shouldn't be talking to you," she whispered. "He will be furious." "I don't want trouble for you," Zarar said. She shook her head quickly. "I needed to tell you something." He waited. For a moment she hesitated, looking around to make sure no one saw. Then she spoke quietly. "He is hiding documents." Zarar's breath stilled. "He keeps them under the old wooden chest in the room. He never lets anyone enter. He says no one will ever know the truth." Zarar frowned. "The truth about what?" Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "About your mother." A silence sharper than any blade settled between them. "What about her?" Zarar asked slowly. The widow swallowed. "There were promises made to her, lands, rights, money her family gave for your future. He hid all the papers after she died." Zarar felt his heartbeat change, heavy, cold, dangerous. He already suspected his father had suppressed documents. But this was betrayal at the deepest level. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. Her voice broke. "Because I am living in the same cage your mother lived in. Because fear has eaten my life too. And because you are the only one who can end this." Zarar closed his eyes for a moment. He didn't cry. He didn't speak. He simply breathed and let the truth burn. When he opened his eyes again, the widow stepped back, scared of the expression she saw in them. "What will you do?" she whispered. Zarar's voice was steady. Whatever I must. For 2 days, Zarar prepared, not with weapons, not with threats, but with knowledge. He met the visiting revenue officer, he contacted the land registry clerk, he gathered old witnesses, he retrieved his mother's story, what she owned, what she was promised, and what had been taken from her in silence. The truth shocked even him. His mother had given dowry beyond what was customary, large amounts of money, jewelry, and rights to land from her family, all meant for her and her children. His father had taken everything, then buried the evidence. Her death had been mourned by the village, but no one had questioned the missing documents. No one had asked why her room was locked. No one had dared oppose the old man. But Zarar was not a child anymore. He had returned to bring everything into the light. Even if he had to tear shadows apart with his own hands. The entire village gathered. The panchayat sat in the center, their faces tense. Zarar stood to one side, calm, composed, holding a folder of documents. His father limped into the courtyard, leaning on his stick. His face was twisted with anger and humiliation. You dare accuse me, he thundered. Zarar didn't flinch. I accuse you of hiding my mother's rights. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The father's face turned red. Lies. Zarar opened the folder. These are copies given by the registry officer. Proof of property my mother owned before her marriage. Proof of financial agreements made by her family. Proof of land shares promised to her children. The old man began trembling violently, not out of fear, but out of losing control. You think you can shame me? He roared. This village knows who I am. They know, Zarar said coldly, but today they will know who my mother was. The elders examined the documents. Murmurs spread. Truth moved like a rising wind. For the first time in his life, Zarar saw real fear in his father's eyes. A fear deeper than anger. A fear of exposure. A fear of losing everything he had built through dominance. The head elder finally spoke. These documents are real. The village erupted in whispers. The old man staggered backward. No, no, this is a trap. Zarar's voice cut through the noise. This is justice. The father stared at him, a look filled with disbelief, hatred, and something broken. You betrayed me, he whispered. Zarar's answer was quiet, unshakable. You betrayed us first. The elders lifted their hands. We will deliver our judgment tomorrow. And just like that, the hearing ended. But the storm had only begun. The night before the final judgment, the village was restless. Doors closed early. Whispers filled the air. Everyone sensed something heavy approaching. Zarar sat alone under the banyan tree, the same place he had cried years ago when his father threw him away like dust. But tonight, he wasn't broken. He wasn't lost. He was steady. A full moon glowed above him, silver and calm, as though blessing every step he had taken. Tomorrow would change everything at sunrise. The villagers gathered again in the courtyard. The panchayat elders sat at the front, holding the documents Zarar had submitted. His mother's rights, his legal share of land, the proof of hidden papers. Zarar's father stood trembling with his stick, trying to maintain his dignity, but his eyes darted everywhere, unable to hold their gaze, as though he feared everyone knew his secrets now. The head elder began. After reviewing the evidence presented by Zarar, and after consulting the registry office, we have reached a decision. Silence gripped the whole village. Nadim's jaw clenched, sweat running down his face. According to the law, the elder continued, Zarar is the rightful heir of 50% of the land. Gasps broke out. The old man staggered, but the elder wasn't finished. There is more. We have uncovered documents belonging to Zarar's late mother, documents that were illegally withheld. People murmured louder. Nadim closed his eyes. Knowing he was exposed, these documents prove that portions of her dowry and inherited land were never transferred to her children, as required by law. The elders looked directly at Nadim. This is a violation. The old man's hands shook violently. His stick clattered to the ground. The final decision fell like thunder. Half of the entire family land will be legally transferred to Zarar, and the remaining land will be divided according to his mother's rightful share. Nadim will no longer have the authority to remove Zarar from the property, and he must provide compensation for the withheld dowry value. The village burst into shocked voices. The father couldn't breathe. You can't do this, he whispered. This is my land, my house, my life. The head elder shook his head. No, it never belonged to only you. You kept others silent for too long. Today, the truth speaks. The old man turned to Zarar, eyes burning with a mixture of rage and humiliation. You did this to me, he whispered. Zarar met his gaze without fear. No, Baba, you did this to yourself. And with that, the old man collapsed onto the broken under the weight of his own actions. That evening, Zarar walked across his fields, but with no pride in his stride, only peace. Years of humiliation had ended. Years of injustice were corrected. The land he once watered with tears now belonged to him by right. The widow approached him quietly. Her hands trembled, unsure. Are you going to throw him out? She asked softly. Zarar shook his head. No, I'm not him. The widow's eyes welled with relief. But things will change, Zarar added gently. He cannot hurt you anymore. You have a place here, a life here, and you will live without fear for the first time. She smiled. He turned to the house that once rejected him. Now it welcomed him. Inside, Nadim sat on the floor, hunched over, hands trembling. He didn't lift his head when Zara entered. "You won," he said in a hollow voice. "Are you happy now?" Zara's voice was calm. "No, this was never about winning. It was about justice." The old man laughed bitterly. "You think I'm a monster?" Zarar looked at him for a long moment. "I think you were afraid," he said softly. "Afraid of losing control, afraid of being questioned, afraid of seeing your own mistakes." The old man's eyes filled with tears he had never allowed himself to shed. "I didn't hate you," he whispered. I didn't know how to be a father." Zara stepped closer. "And I didn't know how to be your son." The silence between them was heavy, but different now, no longer filled with anger, but with truth. The old man looked up slowly. "Will you let me stay? I have nowhere else." Zarar nodded. "You can stay, but things will change. No more shouting, no more fear. This house belongs to all of us." The old man lowered his head, ashamed. "Then maybe I can learn." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning. Months passed. Under Zarar's leadership, the land flourished. New irrigation lines were built, workers were treated with fairness. The widow managed the house with respect she had never received before. The villagers now looked at Zarar not as a boy, but as a man, a leader, and his father. He had changed, slowly but unmistakably. He apologized more, shouted less, listened sometimes, something he had never done before. The man who once ruled with fear now sat quietly in the courtyard, watching his son run the land he once believed Zarar didn't deserve. Sometimes he smiled. Sometimes he cried silently. Sometimes he whispered prayers, perhaps for forgiveness, perhaps for peace. Zarar didn't hate him anymore. Revenge had given him justice. But compassion gave him strength. One evening, as the sun dipped into the fields, the old man called Zarar. "Did you hate me?" he asked. Zarar stood still for a long time before answering. "I hated what you did, but I never hated you." The old man nodded slowly, tears shining in his tired eyes. "You became more of a man than I ever was." Zarar looked at the fields, his mother's legacy, his right, his home. "I became the man she wanted me to be," he said. The old man lowered his head, touched deeply, and as the wind moved through the crops like a soft blessing, Zarar finally felt free, not from land, or law, or cruelty, but from the past.